I always knew my family was broken, but I didn't know it was shattered until blood ran down my son's nose, and my sister laughed like she'd just won a game. My name is Tara. I was born the second daughter, quiet, soft-spoken, and inconvenient. My older sister, Brittany, was the queen of the household. If she kicked a wall, the drywall apologized. If I asked for an extra blanket, my father, Russ, would rip it away and mutter, "Princesses don't get spoiled in this house." But I wasn't a princess, I was a shadow. I learned early that silence was survival, that asking for fairness meant getting slapped, mocked, or iced out. I left home as soon as I turned 18, moved 2 states away, built a life, got married, had a beautiful son named Jonah. He was everything I never had, kind, gentle, curious, but my marriage didn't last. My ex left before Jonah could even say dad. So I worked 2 jobs, paid for school uniforms and quarters, and made sure my little boy never went to bed feeling unloved. I never thought I'd return to my childhood home. But last year, after I lost my job and rent skyrocketed, Brittany called and said, "Why don't you move back here for a while? It'll give you time to get on your feet." I should have known. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. She didn't offer out of kindness. She offered because she wanted an audience. Jonah and I moved into the guest room, if you could even call it that, more like a converted storage closet with a mattress on the floor and one tiny window that barely opened. My father still ruled the house like a drunk king with Brittany as his second in command. My mother, Susan, was a ghost in her own body, always vacuuming something that wasn't dirty. The first few weeks, I kept my head down, cooked, cleaned, folded laundry like I was 13 again. I told Jonah to be extra polite, to say thank you, to not ask questions. But you can't shrink forever. Jonah loved to read. He loved books the way other kids loved candy. One afternoon, I caught Brittany going through his backpack. When I asked why, she just sneered and said, "I'm checking for weed. Kids lie, especially ones raised by single moms." Jonah heard that. He didn't see anything until bedtime. He curled up next to me and whispered, "Mom, why does Aunt Brittany hate me?" I didn't have an answer, just tears he couldn't see in the dark. A week later, Jonah accidentally knocked over a vase while trying to grab a library book off the top shelf. He told me what happened right away, but before I could get up to clean it, Brittany had already stormed in and grabbed him by the arm. "You little snitch," she spat. "That vase cost more than your clothes." Then, before I could scream, she shoved him, hard. Jonah's head slammed into the wall. I heard the crack of drywall, then I heard him scream. I ran like my body wasn't mine anymore. Found him on the floor, clutching his face, blood pouring from his nose, tears streaking his cheeks. "You hurt my son!" I screamed, grabbing him and shielding his body with mine. But Brittany wasn't done. She pointed and barked, "That's what happens to liars!" And then, from the living room, I heard it, my father's laugh, that deep, disgusting chuckle that said everything I needed to know. "That's what happens when you raise a tattletale," he called. "Don't like it? Door's right there." I looked up. My mother was standing behind him, mouth twitching like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Jonah was crying into my chest. He didn't understand what he'd done wrong. Neither did I. That night, I packed our bags. My son had gauze stuffed in his nose and a black eye forming. I held ice to his face and whispered, "We're leaving in the morning." But Brittany had locked the doors. She took the keys, hid my phone, told Jonah, "Your mom's running away because she's weak." We were trapped. For 3 more days. 3 days of psychological warfare. Brittany calling Jonah names, accidentally stepping on his toys, and threatening to toss his books in the trash. My dad turning up the TV every time I tried to speak. My mom placing untouched plates of food on the counter but never making eye contact. It was hell. But they forgot one thing. I grew up in this house. I knew every inch of it, every creaky floorboard, every loose tile. And I knew how to get out. At 3 a.m., I wrapped Jonah in 2 jackets, stuffed his backpack with essentials, and crawled through the attic vent. We dropped down into the neighbor's yard and ran until my legs gave out. I called a friend from a gas station payphone. She drove 2 hours to get us. No questions. We didn't look back. I moved us into a shelter for 2 weeks, then into subsidized housing. I got a job at a local print shop and enrolled Jonah in a new school. But something inside me never healed. I kept seeing the blood, hearing the laugh, watching my son shrink under their voices. And that's when I decided they would cry at my feet. But not because I begged. Because I didn't. Because I became the storm they thought I'd never survive. I didn't want revenge at first. I wanted peace. I wanted to move on and never hear their names again. But trauma doesn't just fade when the bruises do. It lingers in your bones. It flinches in your sleep. Jonah wouldn't read anymore. The boy who once asked me for just one more chapter every night now stared at his books like they were traps. He was afraid of doing anything wrong. He walked around to school like a ghost in oversized sneakers. And one night I heard him whisper into his pillow, "I didn't mean to be bad." That broke me. I stayed up till sunrise, and by morning I knew exactly what I needed to do. Not scream, not post online, not call the cops. No, I'd give them something they never expected. Fear, humiliation, and irreversible consequences. I didn't come from money, but I was smart. While working at the print shop, I picked up freelance design gigs, logos, invitations, packaging. It paid peanuts at first, but I stayed up every night after Jonah fell asleep, sharpening my skills like a weapon. 3 months later, I had a client, then 3, then 10. A woman named Kaylee from New York saw my work and offered to mentor me. She said, "Your eye for detail is insane. You ever think about launching your own brand?" I laughed at first, but the seed was planted. I named it Ghost Nest. The idea? Art inspired by pain that refuses to die. Broken porcelain, ripped silk, torn paper patched with gold. Every design told a story, mine and thousands of others like mine. It blew up faster than I expected. I sold out of my first 300 hoodie orders in 2 weeks. By month 4, I had a small team and a new apartment. Jonah got his own room with glow stars on the ceiling and shelves lined with books again. He started smiling, laughing. That's when Brittany messaged me. It was the same smug tone she always had. "Wow, look who finally decided to be somebody. Hope you don't forget the family who raised you." I didn't reply. But I remembered something she once said to Jonah. "Snitches get what they deserve." She didn't know I'd been collecting. Every receipt, every text, every bruise captured in hospital reports from that night, anonymously filed by the urgent care clinic I visited the morning we escaped. One of the nurses had seen the mark on Jonah's cheek and filed it without my asking, said, "In case you ever need this, some stories need proof." I never knew how grateful I'd be, because 2 weeks later, a lawyer named Meister Hallstrom reached out. He'd found my brand through his daughter, asked if I'd ever considered telling my story. I said no, not directly. But I showed him the folder I kept locked in a cabinet under my bed. He sat with it for an hour, then said, "You ever consider suing your father and sister for damages?" I hesitated, not because I was afraid of losing, but because I wanted something better than a courtroom win. I wanted to burn down the version of them they'd built for the world. So we didn't sue. We offered them a job. My team reached out using a fake brand name, Wildglass, a luxury startup looking for ambassadors in small towns. Brittany fell for it. She showed up to the interview in a bright pink blazer and heels too tall for the gravel driveway. My photographer filmed everything. I watched from a van across the street. She bragged about her great family values, said, "I've helped raise my sister's son. He's like mine, really. I know how to shape character." I didn't need to show the world that clip. Just at the company Brittany had applied to work at. They posted a statement 3 days later. "We do not work with individuals involved in domestic abuse, especially against children. Effective immediately, all offers and affiliations are void." It went viral. Small-town news picked it up. So did the blog I'd quietly sponsored weeks before, anonymously feeding the full story with evidence, not gossip, not vengeance. Documentation. It ripped their reputation apart. But I wasn't done. 1 month later, I sent my father a package. Inside, a hardcover book of Ghost Nest's designs. Page 14 featured a sketch titled Silence Bleeds, a cracked wall with a child's shadow imprinted like a scar. Underneath, in small print, inspired by Jonah, age 8, survivor. He never responded. But I knew he saw it, because Susan, the woman who birthed me but never mothered me, called the next week sobbing. "We didn't know it hurt you that bad." I didn't answer. Because she did know. She saw the blood. She watched me beg. She vacuumed while I iced my son's face. The next call came from Brittany. Her job gone. Her local sponsorships canceled. She cried into the phone like a stranger. "You ruined me, Tara. You destroyed everything." "No," I whispered. "You did." Then I hung up. "And Jonah?" He stood beside me while I did it. He looked up and asked, "Was that Aunt Brittany?" "Yes." "What did she want?" I smiled. To be forgiven. Jonah looked down for a moment, then simply said, "I'm glad you didn't." I wrapped my arm around him and whispered, "Me too." Because this time, we weren't running. We were standing tall in the wreckage they built. And watching it crumble, the dust hadn't fully settled. Even after Brittany lost her contracts, after the story spread like wildfire through town halls, churches, and dinner tables, I knew there was one thing they still clung to. Their illusion of control. They thought I'd come back begging eventually. That time would soften me. That Jonah would ask to see his family. That I'd regret burning the bridge. But we weren't on a bridge. We were on the ashes of a prison they built, and I was only just getting started. Jonah had started therapy, and one afternoon after a session, he looked at me and said, "Can I draw something for your ghost nest?" I handed him paper. He drew a house split in two, one side covered in vines and chains, the other side a window open with birds flying out. He titled it finally, "Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." I knew then, this wasn't just my story. It was his too. And he deserved an ending where he saw me choose us over them. So, when my father's company, his rusted-out little lumber supply business, tried to sponsor a school event in our district, I didn't scream. I got involved. I donated under Ghost Nest anonymously. I offered full funding, free shirts for every kid, and custom design workshops, in exchange for one clause in the sponsorship. No affiliation with any party or business under investigation for child endangerment, abuse, or neglect. The board approved it instantly. And just like that, Dad was erased from the one stage he'd used for 30 years to pretend he was a pillar of the community. He showed up on event day anyway, wearing his old branded polo, trying to hand out flyers. I watched from the booth across the field as the principal leaned over and gently asked him to leave. He turned red, barked something ugly, but then he saw the shirts the kids were wearing. Jonah's design. Finally. Printed on every back in bright, joyful yellow. I thought he'd explode. Instead, he just walked away. Alone. No one stopped him. No one looked him in the eye. That was the day I knew we'd done it. We hadn't just fought back. We'd rewritten the script. We weren't victims. We were authors. 2 weeks later, Jonah got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single photo, him, age 7, holding a soccer trophy. The back read, "We miss you. Please forgive us." He looked up at me and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I shook my head. "You did everything right. That's why they're scared now." He nodded slowly, then ripped the photo in half. That night, he slept with the window open. The final twist came unexpectedly. A woman named Elaine, a counselor from our old school district, reached out. She'd seen the blog post, heard about the brand, and wanted to partner with us. "I've worked with kids like Jonah my whole life," she said. "But you? You turned survival into strength, into story. We could do something bigger together." I said yes. That year, Ghost Nest partnered with 3 shelters, released a special line called the Wall Breakers, and funded 10 art scholarships for kids healing from abuse. And on launch day, I stood on stage, Jonah by my side. Brittany was in the crowd. I knew she'd show up, her hair dull, her smile tight. She stood by the door like she belonged in the background now. Good. I raised the mic and said, "To the children who were silenced, your voices are art. And to the people who tried to destroy that art, you didn't win. You just gave us something unforgettable to paint with." Jonah grinned and held my hand. "And Brittany?" She wept, not because we invited her back, but because she realized we didn't need her anymore. None of them. Because we had each other. And we were fine.